Good evening and welcome to Health Exposures. I'm your host, Deborah Arneson, and welcome. Tonight we have a wonderful guest, one of my very most favorite people in the whole world, not only from a spiritual vantage point, but from a knowledge vantage point. His name is Joe Bushes, and Joe has been with us before. I'm sure you've seen him on the show, and we're talking about acid and alkaline balance or imbalances. So Joe, welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's really good to have you back.
I have red cheeks now from those little comments.
He's great.
A little embarrassed.
He's a walking world book of knowledge when it comes to nutrition,
Thank
and
you.
has been my mentor in many instances. So
thank you. That's
I'm
very flattering.
appreciative of you.
Thanks.
So let's talk about acid and alkaline balance. How does it relate to an individual's health?
Okay, let's first start with, if you take, people hear the word acid or alkaline in the term pH and they really have no idea what that means. So if we take a line and at one end we put 0 and at the other end we put 14 and we put 7 right in the middle, 7 would be distilled water. And so it's a completely neutral. And the more you go to the lower numbers, that tends to be more acidic. And the higher we go, it tends to be more alkaline. And just to give you an idea, your mouth tends to be slightly alkaline, and your stomach has a pH of like 1.5 to 3, and so it really digests the proteins and kind of mashes them up and takes proteins, these long chains of beads, and breaks them down into individual beads. And then your body, through the wisdom of your body, then your system gets alkaline in the small intestine, and then acidic again in the large intestine. So your body constantly goes through acidity, alkalinity, acidity, alkalinity.
And fluxes.
And fluxes, right. And our blood tends to be very acidic. It's I'm sorry, very alkaline. And so it's like I think it's 7.35 to 7.45, right? And if your system gets higher than that 7.45, it tends to be what we call relative alkalosis, and it gets lower than that, like 7.2. Now that's still alkaline technically, however, it's called relative acidosis. And so our body struggles with everything that it has to maintain this perfect pH of 7.35 to 7.45.
Is it not true though, Joe? I remember hearing this because as a child I had so many cavities. I had really white teeth, but I also had a very alkaline pH, and my dentist said people who were more alkaline tend to have more cavities or develop more cavities. People who are more acidic don't necessarily have whiter teeth, but they have less cavities. Is that true?
Well, yeah. If you think about it, if you're too acidic, then the acid in your mouth would eat away at the enamel. So it's this whole thing about balance. But I do know that there's a guy by the name of Huggins did some research, and also a guy out in California, Dr. Pottinger, and he found out that with a certain pH, if your mouth was like, I think it was 7.1 to 7.3, that you had no cavities. Whereas if you were much higher than that, which is you're talking about the alkalinity, then your teeth got very soft and the bacteria could get in there. And
so for those people out there who have dental hygiene problems and have problems with gum disease, how about gargling with sea salt at night? That should make them more acidic.
That would be a great start.
There's a good tip.
There's a good tip.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, tell us this. Tell us about the negative acidic effects of being too acidic in the system and your pH being too acid, and what can that do to the body?
Well, a lot of things, and it's a field that's rapidly exploding, and it's just fascinating for me to think about some of the things that might happen, because first of all, if your system is too acidic, you've got enzymes in your body that can't be utilized. And so here are these great digestive enzymes, these great inflation fighters, these great cancer fighters,
hormone producers,
and they're like standing in the wings, they're on the football field. Can I go in, coach? Can I go in, coach? I want to do it. I want to do it. And because they're not the right pH, it's like, no.
So they're destroyed on contact, or they're just unavailable?
They're no good. They can't be used.
Okay.
And
can you produce them okay?
You can make them, yes, but you just can't use them. And so you need a certain pH for these enzymes to work. Another thing which is fascinating is that if your system is too acidic, your hemoglobin carries oxygen. Come over here. And so it carries the oxygen, and then it carries it all the way to the far tissues, and then it releases it where it needs it. That's how we get oxygen in our toes, and we get it in our fingers. But if our system is too acidic, the hemoglobin will carry the oxygen, but it can't let it go. And so as a result, we become hypoxic.
We're deflated.
We're deflated.
Sure.
Yeah, and so we're tired. We have this anemia, but we've got enough hemoglobin, we have enough red blood cells, so we go to the doctor and say, we're exhausted. I'm so tired, doctor, can't you do anything for me? no, Mr. Jones, your health looks, you're
Right.
not anemic, everything looks fine. But really, we're too acidic. And see, normally a doctor wouldn't really put two and two together, and so he wouldn't know what to do.
What causes an individual to become too acidic?
Well, a couple things. First of all, we live in an acid environment. Acid rains. The food we eat is loaded with dyes, emulsifiers, waxes, bleaches, emulsifiers, all tend to be too acidic. Right. We tend to be very emotional. I mean, who isn't stressed out today? We certainly drink our fair share of soda pop. I mean, what's the average consumption? 2 or 3 a day.
So you're saying that sugar makes you more acidic?
Sugar tends to make you more acidic.
So if you take in too much sugar, then your body actually flips and tries to neutralize that sugar, which is basically alkaline, right?
I don't know if it's acid or alkaline when you put pH peeper in sugar water, but I know the effect on the body is...
It creates more acidity.
Acidity, right.
So,
the
I mean,
net ash or the residual effect.
The byproduct.
Of the byproduct. Same thing, it's kind of like that with, if you take many of your citrus juices, they're acidic by nature, but then the result on the body is they tend to make the body more alkaline.
Right.
That's why lemon
it's
juice
the
really
opposing
can be
effect.
Good. Right. But meat tends to make you more acidic. I mean, if you think about it, meat, bread, grains, all the things that we consume highly in our diet. Sugars.
Right.
I mean, pop. To take one glass of pop, it would take 33 glasses of regular water to negate the effect of 1 can of pop. That's how it puts your system...
Hey, you little carbohydrate junkies out there hearing this. That's appalling. 33 glasses of water to neutralize the acid from 1 can of soda.
That's right. Now, that's not to mention if you're drinking a Pepsi or a Coca-Cola and we get our 10 teaspoons of sugar
on top
per
of that.
can, per 12-ounce can. Not to mention now we have the 20-ounce variety.
Right, we go into get the big slurps or whatever they are in the white hens. You see these kids sucking on these all day long. It's amazing to me.
So. And all those things tend to make your system more acidic.
It's so interesting, Joe, because I was over at the hospital last week and we were just doing some brief consulting with some of the kids. And, you know, at one of the clinics, most of the women who come in there are between 14 and 21.
Okay.
And, you know, I was there with one of my consultants and we were simply asking if they'd like to know more about their diet. Would they like to see some of this information on good, bad, and ugly fats and proteins? And they were like, no, not really. And I said, well, here's some information. I gave it to him. The one little girl went, oh my goodness, everything that's ugly and bad I'm eating. So we sat down and did a diet review. And here's what this child had, 14 years old. About 8 soda pops, the 12 to 16 ounce.
This is that one day?
That's what she had for a daily diet. About 4 Link sausages, a Burger King burger with a muffin and fries, and then maybe a bowl of cereal. That was the average diet, and that is the average diet for a lot of American kids.
If I were to eat that much sugar, Deborah, I would be like this.
Oh, I know, because you have all muscle. There's no fat on your body. You have no residual stores, Joseph. But it makes people crazy and moody, and she was very overweight.
Yeah.
Yep, she was very overweight and had no energy, and that's what that type of diet does. And what's happened in America is we're exposed to foods that are processed, adulterated, dyed, colored, and they have no live nutritional value. Right. And
that's
if you eat that all the time, you're going to be in what we call acid-alkaline imbalance, right?
That's exactly right. Well, there's 2 problems with this. It's either A, you consume too many acid foods, which we do a lot of anyway. I mean, any food by its nature tends to go towards acidity. But the other thing that happens is we don't have enough alkalizing foods to counterbalance. I mean,
what would they be?
Well, fruits and vegetables, basically. Your fruits and vegetables. Simple.
Yeah.
And water. I mean, we need water to flush out our kidneys and to get rid of some of the cellular waste that we have. But that's, I think, the #1 deficiency in America is water. We don't drink enough water. Right. And we drink enough coffee, we drink enough pop, but we don't drink enough water.
Right, exactly. And everything else is very dehydrating.
That's right. But let me tell you something else about it, because I was listening to a lecture and all of a sudden, pop, my brain just went wild when I heard this. If you think about it, if your cells become, or your tissues become too hypoxic, not enough oxygen, what thrives in a anaerobic environment? I mean, you know, already you're shaking your head. Bacteria, yeast, viruses, some new research in cancers. I mean, hello, I wonder why we catch every little bug that goes around. Right. It's because, that's one reason, that's not the only reason. But that could be one reason.
It creates a perfect host setup.
That's exactly right.
You're the perfect host for a party of bacteria. Party down. Let's have all our relatives come over. What about
That's
coffee?
Right.
What does coffee do to people?
Coffee, actually, here's another one of these odd things. If you put pH paper in it, it is acidic, but it does have an alkalizing effect on the system.
Because it's so acidic, it creates the body's ability to counterbalance and make more of an alkaline pH.
Right. But green tea is a beverage that's something that's very good for you, and that has a positive effect because of the bioflavonoids, the flavonoids in there, and it has the alkalizing effect as well.
I had read somewhere also, Joe, that rice is one of the most neutral foods there is. It has the pH of like 7.3, is it?
You know, I'm not sure the exact pH, but I do know it is one of the best neutral foods.
Yeah, it's one of the most hypoallergenic foods because it does have such a neutral pH.
Sure.
So more people are less allergic or reactive to rice-based sugars.
And we hardly ever eat rice.
Right.
I mean, you're allergic to corn because everything has. I got some cranberry juice the other day, and I went to take a look at it. First ingredient, high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
Corn's in everything.
Yes.
Wheat's in everything.
And dairy.
And dairy is in everything.
Three most popular allergies.
Yeah.
And probably the three most popular foods that create acidity in the body as well.
That's for sure.
Milk sugar, right? Wheat, which is a short sugar chain.
That's right.
Most of the wheat's very processed. And what was the other one we said?
Corn.
The corn.
Yeah.
Corn, another sugar. Well, sorry, guys.
Sorry, that's right.
We're here to bring you all kinds of good news. Hang in there. Take a notepad out. Okay. So tell us about the direct and indirect effects of eating this way. What are some of the typical health conditions associated with being very, very acidic?
Very, very acidic. You're going to tend to be achy. Your joints are going to be, arthritis would be one thing. Certainly hypoglycemia, eventually going into diabetes would be another situation.
Which is on the rise in this country.
It is on the rise. Yep. Diabetes is definitely. It's actually always been there, but we haven't really detected it as much. And we just eat far too many carbohydrates in this country.
Which creates hypoglycemia, which is a pre-existing condition
for
that
diabetes.
Contributes
That's
to
right.
diabetes.
So other conditions, some researchers are showing that cancer and heart disease can be caused. See, what happens is when your body has too much acidity, your blood has to be at a very specific pH. That's when all the magic happens, so to speak.
Right.
And so your body will try to get rid of that acid. First, you'll urinate a lot of it out. Second, you'll blow it off as you breathe. And that's why exercise is so good. You know, everybody says exercise, exercise, exercise.
Sure.
Here's one more reason to exercise, because your system has to blow off all that carbon dioxide.
Right.
And then the next way that we get, what happens is if you can't get it through your lungs and you can't urinate it out, then what happens is your body starts stuffing it in the tissues and stuffing it inside the cells.
And that's when you end up with like distraught tissues with achiness and soreness.
Right. Yes, and the cell membranes, the covering, we've got something like 27 billion cells, these wonderful little manufacturing sites.
Plants,
the plants, it's like a manufacturing plant. And the covering for things to get in and out is the cell membrane. And that cell membrane gets tighter and things can't get in, and the good stuff can't get in, and the bad stuff comes out.
So it gets tighter when you're too alkaline?
When you're too acidic.
Too acidic. Okay,
and when
so
you're alkaline,
it tightens up in an effort to protect itself, is that it?
And because the cell becomes toxic, you don't want to let the acids out to destroy the blood. So the cell, by its very nature to protect itself, will tighten up, and so it won't let the acids out.
That's very interesting.
Oh, it is. It's fun.
So can someone actually take like a urine dipstick test or something to detect their acid pH balance?
Well, urine is one good. A urine dipstick would be one test. And
you can buy those at the drugstore, right?
Yeah. Another test is a carbon dioxide test that you would get from a blood test. There's a wonderful.
If that's low, what does that mean?
If a carbon dioxide is high, you tend to be more acidic.
Right.
And if your urine is low, under 6.4, you tend to be acidic.
Well, I see on my blood tests, most often I see people with very low CO2s. Very low. So they're extraordinarily alkaline.
Well, see, what we need to do is we need to look at all the different facets. So we also want to look at calcium levels. See, what happens is when your system becomes too acidic, first things that happens is sodium and potassium are your buffers, and so they will buffer and tend to neutralize those acids.
They're like the armed guards.
Yes, they're the first ones.
Yeah, they get out there like, oh, boom, boom, boom. Okay.
But what happens is, because we're on a salt-free diet, see, our society says don't eat salt.
I know.
And we don't get as much potassium because we don't eat as much vegetables as we should, because we're eating our Burger Kings and our
French fries.
8 Coke sodas a day.
Yeah.
But then what comes next is calcium and magnesium. And so what the body does is starts pulling it out of the bones so that it can neutralize this excess acid. So when you really evaluate, you'll see a person's sodium will be low. You'll see the person's potassium will be low. You'll see the person's calcium will be low. Their magnesium will be low. Their chromium will be low. Their triglycerides will be high. Their cholesterol tends to be high. And so
that's a lot of stress on the system.
Oh, it is.
To have that.
And there's a wonderful tool called NutriBalance that many physicians have in their offices now that will very quickly take a numerical scan and can tell you what percent of acidity you are, what percent of alkalinity you are, or if you're balanced.
And does that help the doctor then guide the patient in eating?
Oh, it does, because it will help them to develop a specific diet for that patient.
Really?
And doctors love it because it's just such a quick scan. They can learn so much at just a glance. You know, the average doctor, I mean, maybe he's with a patient for 6-10 minutes. I mean, it's because he's so overworked. He just can't spend the time that he would like to researching the patient's file and assessing the blood tests and comparing them and putting them in clusters. And so this just helps them quickly.
Blow your horn a little bit here again. Okay. I mean, isn't this pretty much what you've done all along in your private practice?
I have.
You've taken all of these tests and you've compiled this info by hand.
Yes, I have. I've done that for like 10 years. And what you've done is you've assisted in the creation of this program. Am I not correct? Well, actually, I can't take all the credit for that because I was doing it by hand for 10 to 12 years, and it just would take so long to do it. And a medical doctor by the name of Joseph Montanti in Colorado had developed a program 15 years ago. And what he would do is doctors from all over the country would fax him results, and then what he would do then is he would send them back these 10 to 12 page to 20 page reports. I said, Doc, why don't you, let's get this in doctors' offices. I mean, why? It's such a hassle. They have to fax it here. They get lost. The patient comes in. The report isn't there.
Not good.
Everybody's embarrassed. It takes. I said, give it to the doctors. Put it in their hands. And so
let them be the teacher.
Let them be the teacher. Let them be the coach. You know, take yourself out of the loop. And so after much harassment of about 5 years, he finally succumbed. And so now it is available in doctors' offices.
Well, I've seen the program. It's marvelous. It's a wonderful tool.
It is. Patients love it. They just love it because they can learn. I mean, here is a snapshot in time of themselves.
Yes.
And it gives you the disease ranges, which is the normal laboratory ranges. Most people don't realize that, but that's what lab ranges are. The average lab test is 95. They'll take a mean, then they'll take 2 standard deviations low and 2 standard deviations high. And that's like 95% of the people fall in there.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh, it is.
And that's why so many people go to the doctor and the doctor says, it's all in your head, you need Prozac.
That's right.
You know, there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly in the norms. Well, those norms, those ranges also become wider as the population becomes sicker.
That's right.
So, you know, as you end up progressing to the high or low end of the norm, or what we call, or the standard lab calls the normal ranges, you're in trouble. You're feeling the symptoms, but everyone is telling you, the patient, that you're fine.
That's right. But you're saying, I'm tired. I have no energy. I don't digest my food. I don't sleep. I get jumpy. I yell at my wife.
My kids don't like me anymore.
That's right. So, but this compares you to an optimal person, to an optimal or bionic man or woman. And the beauty of it then is it will do is cluster tests. For example, cholesterol could be a liver problem. It could be a thyroid problem. It could be a pituitary problem. It could be an immune problem. And so what it does is clusters these tests into categories and helps you, the physician, very quickly see, that's an immune system problem, or oh, there's a liver problem, or oh, there's this or that. And one test might not give you a lot of indication, but if you see 5, 6, 7, 10 tests that are outside the optimal range, not outside the disease range, but outside the optimal range, now you know something's happening, and we can predict disease before it happens and then prevent it. Why wait till you have diabetes? Let's do something about it while it's working. Sometimes it takes years to get it.
Exactly. Well, it takes, you know, once it shows up in a blood test, you're there. And you've been there for a long time.
That's right.
I tell people, don't wait for your ranges to look abnormal.
That's right.
Once you're abnormal, you're in hot water.
That's right.
You know, up to your nose, up to the marker.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Let's deal with it when it's up to your waist. We've still got some moving room.
You can struggle out of it. So tell me why some people are so plagued with every little bug and virus that comes along.
Well, that kind of goes along with what we were saying earlier about when you have that, your system it doesn't get enough oxygen to the cells, and so you become hypoxic. And so what happens is it's a breeding ground for the bacteria and the viruses and as we said, the cancer. And so your system is too acidic. Also, the other thing that happens is when your system gets too acidic, your body doesn't make enough hydrochloric acid. And hydrochloric acid is necessary to see, when we eat a piece of lettuce or a tomato or a cabbage or just about any food, if we could have a microscope and look in on that thing, I mean, it's loaded with bacteria.
Right.
And so the hydrochloric acid in our stomach kills that bacteria.
Before it travels further.
Exactly. But if we already are too acidic, our body's not going to make as much hydrochloric acid, and as a result, it'll pass through that little one-way valve, that pyloric valve. Now, digestibility, for a while, your pancreatic enzymes can overcome that and really work hard to digest it, but it doesn't kill that bacteria that's there. And so you're just susceptible to everything.
Joe, we're going to just sidebar a little bit because this is a very good point. So many Americans are hypochlorhydric, meaning they don't have enough hydrochloric acid, and they're walking around and they're taking Tums and things like that. Tell our viewing audience why this is not a good idea.
Well, when you take Tums, what happens is basically you're just quenching the problem. I mean, you're treating the symptom. But there's an underlying cause. When you digest proteins, for example, you have to take proteins, which might look like a long string of beads. And on each one of those beads are amino acids. And those amino acids are invaluable for your whole system. Amino acids will take minerals, and they'll put them on their back, and they'll carry them through the small intestine and to the cells, and carry them right. L-carnitine, for example, will carry calcium or magnesium right to the heart. And so if we don't have enough amino acids, then our brain doesn't work. And you can't break them down. If you can't break down the proteins, you can't have the amino acids. And so, what you're doing is treating the symptoms instead of getting to the cause. You've got a little one-way valve in your stomach called a pyloric valve. And when your system reaches a certain pH, boom, the pyloric valve opens, and then the body turns on some neutralizing things, some bicarbonate, and it takes the pH from acidic to alkaline. Now, when your stomach can handle a pH of like 1.5 to 4, I mean, it can handle very acid conditions. But in your small intestine, it's very alkaline. And so when you get that alkaline 8 to 8.5 to 9, and it goes into those tissues that it can handle 1.5 to 4, it burns those tissues.
Sure, it's too acidic.
Right. And so it's very, very rare that people have too much acid. Very rare.
Is it?
And so,
so the hydrochloric acid problem should not necessarily be alleviated by taking something like Tums. It's a Band-Aid on the boo-boo. Plus Tums contains aluminum, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. So we have enough aluminum in our diet. I have enough Alzheimer's, thank you. Because they have shown that aluminum and heavy metals contribute to Alzheimer's.
Exactly.
Is it the sole cause? We don't know, but there's a correlation between high aluminum levels and Alzheimer's.
It's interesting to denote too that when we talk about digestive enzymes, that I have so many patients who don't have enzymes. I mean, they just don't have sufficient enzymes, and they're all on digestive enzymes with pancreatic support. And when you put them on these products, boy, they do well.
They do extremely well.
How about Helicobacter pylori?
Helicobacter pylori, it's a bacteria that's in your stomach.
And it's not broken down because there's not enough hydrochloric acid.
That's one reason. There's another reason is because your body will make chemicals if you don't drink enough water. And if you don't drink enough water, one of the things that it makes is histamine. And guess what flares up in the presence of histamine?
Helicobacter pylori.
That's right.
Isn't this great information, you guys? This is so cool.
Plus your stomach, I mean, we have to have this layer of mucus between us. I mean, here you've got this acid. Well, if you took hydrochloric acid that you use in your stomach and poured it in your hand, it would eat right through your hands. That's how strong the stuff is. So we have to have a barrier between us and that acid. And so it's a mucus lining. And if you drink enough water, your body will make a nice thick layer of mucus. But if you don't drink enough water, those layers get thinner and thinner and thinner. And
then we get tummy aches, and then we get ulcers.
And we wonder why. Hello.
And then we're really stressed out.
That's right.
And then the bacteria are growing, and on and on and on. So it's very important. What do you suggest to our viewing audience that they do to compensate for too much alkalinity in their diet? What daily steps can they take to adjust their diet?
Well, first thing they want to do is eat more vegetables. Eat more vegetables because...
How many a day? How many cups?
I like to have people eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And if I could get them to eat more, I would.
What's a serving?
To me, a serving is a cup.
Okay.
It's a cup.
Like a piece of fruit, or a cup of vegetables is
would
one
be a
serving.
So
and
I'd
at
like
least 5 a day.
At least 5 a day. If you could do more, I would like to have them do
Did
more.
I learn that from you?
I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah, I
might have learned it from you.
We go for 4 cups of vegetables a day in my clinic, and 2 to 3 fruits.
2 to 3 fruits. That's
I go
good.
for that 9 servings a day, according to the American Cancer Society.
That's good.
So
more fruits and vegetables, and here's just one more reason to do that. Now, 75% of the people that are watching us are too acidic. 3 out of 4 people. So if there's 4 of you sitting on a couch, 1, 2, 3, you 3 are too acidic. The 4th one, you're probably balanced.
Really?
But so more fruits and vegetables, less acid-forming foods, particularly pop and your
coffee,
starches, right?
Twinkies, Ho-Hos, Fritos, buns, French fries.
That's right, all those goodies.
Fast foods.
Exercise is another thing we want to do because we want to blow off the carbon dioxide. I mean, that's one of the things that happens when we exercise.
You know what's amazing, Joe? Speaking for on my own benefit, when I exercise with diligence, my 4 days a week, all of my aches go away.
Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing because I have a lot of muscle problems in my neck. They all go away immediately, within a week. It's amazing.
That's right.
So that talks about that blowing off of steam.
That's right. Blow off that carbon
dioxide.
And the other thing is drink more water. I mean, those are simple things that I'm sure you've told your guests for years, but you know, again, here's one more reason to do that. Okay, so we're going to drink more water. How much water do you think individuals need per day? Well, I think people need to start by drinking a lot because they're so dehydrated. And what I tell people is to take your weight and divide it in half. Okay. And that's how many ounces you need for the first 2 or 3 months. So if I weigh 140, you would drink 70 ounces a day. Now, will people urinate like crazy initially? They will urinate like crazy. Takes for the 3 weeks or so. First 2 or 3 weeks. That's exactly right. And then their body just calms right down. But you'll find a lot of people that are on low-calorie diets and they can't lose weight and they can't figure out what's going on. They'll start urinating more. All of a sudden, the cellulite starts going down. They're less puffy. Their bowels start working better. I mean, if you think it, we usually carry like 5 pounds of feces in our colon for some food that's like stuck on the sides. Just kidding. But the average person, because they're constipated, does. And so you want to lose weight, the first thing you should do is drink more good water and not tap water either, bottled water or something with the chlorate filtered water. Right? That's good advice. Real quickly, because we're running out of time. Okay. How do people find these doctors who are using the NutriBalance program? Well, that's a good question. You gotta make it quick here. They could call 1-800-373-1373, and we can give them the list of the doctors. Okay, good. Thank you, Joseph, for joining us tonight. Well, it was great having you again. It's good to be here. It was great. And thank you, folks, for viewing us this evening. Please join us next week. We'll be talking about your colon, speaking of constipation. So be there, be square. I'm Deborah Arneson. Until then, good health to you. You know, you just kind of have to shop around and let your fingers do the dialing. So I would, you know, just like any bottled water, you need to really investigate, call people, ask them what they carry, and do some competitive shopping. So they're available. But coming back to your earlier question about, you know, what to look for and what do you want in your bottled waters, you know, I brought a little chart along here that might be a little bit helpful. I hope the camera can hone in on this.
I'm not sure. But we have bottled waters here in different brands, you know, showing the total dissolved solvents. And remember, we said that anything that's close to 0 is very, very good. Anything that's higher than 1,000 is pretty bad. Now, if you look at this, things like the Chippewa Falls over here is a pretty good water. It's really low on TDSs. It's 92. So this is something that's worth its value. If you're going to pay money for bottled water, you may as well get something that's good for you and it's not contributing to your illness, more so to your wellness. This one here, Arrowhead Spring, I've really not seen that much of it in the Midwest. Poland Spring is a very good water as well. It's 124. The Mountain Valley is 205. Sparkling Springs is something that's pretty available in almost everyone's offices, and that's 450. So that's starting to climb back up there. Perrier is a bubbly water, and that's 505. Then Crystal Geyser is 590. And the Pellegrino out of Italy, which is in most finer restaurants, you know, would be like 1,180. So that's quite high. Now, you will see, when you look for waters as well, you will see things like processed waters, like Spring Valley or Hinckley and Schmidt, which are processed here in Chicago. That means that they're locally filtered. And filtered isn't necessarily good. Remember, we talked about all water municipalities are filtered waters. So you don't actually get what you think you're getting in some of these bottled waters. The interesting thing right now is that there are over 700 different chemicals or problem garbage things or solvents that can be found in waters. And there is actually no FDA regulation for waters. It's governed under the FDA of our government as a food, but it's not really a food. I mean, according to the EPA, you know, it really needs to be classified as something other than a food, and or it needs to have some label restrictions or guidelines for manufacturers. Right now, Jody, if you and I wanted to go into business, we could go out, take our hose, and put some water in a bottle, and bottle it and sell it.
And that's perfectly legal.
As bottled water. Yes, it is. Isn't that amazing? So, you know, how is anyone to know? You really need, the only guideline that's really safe to go by, I think, for people is if it doesn't list a TDS, I say don't buy it because they're not proud of it. Again, it may be a spring water and you think, well, it comes out of the earth, it goes through the filtration system, and because it goes through the earth, it should be better for me because it hasn't been tampered with or filtered or deionized or carbon activated, treated, or things like that. But some things that come out of the earth, depending on the area that it comes out of in the earth or in the country, and depending on the spill off and the fall off, can be very polluted and have lots of total dissolved solids. So you need to make sure that you look for that TDS on the label and that the TDS is less than 500.
And you also want to look for the difference of purified as opposed to filtered.
Right.
It's something as consumers that we should lobby for
right.
within our local government.
Right. Things like distilled water, I get calls all the time, people going, should I drink distilled water? And I'm like, well, distilled is simply, you know, a filtered tap water. That's all it is. What they've done is they've taken out all the minerals, you know, and I say to people, doesn't mean that it's any more pure, you know, than regular old tap water. All they've done is they've distilled out the minerals. You also have, you know, distilled is sometimes steam evaporated, and if it's steam evaporated, again, they take the steam that they take off the water and then they bottle that. Doesn't mean it's any more purified either, okay?
So it would depend on what type of an instrument it had to go through first.
Right, right.
So
that's why I say go for spring water with low TDSs, and you know for sure you're not paying more, because anytime you have a manufacturing plant and you have employees and you have overhead, you know you're going to pay more for that water because they have to purify it. Somebody has to run the plant. Somebody has to make sure the machines are working. Someone has to test the water. Not that they don't test water that comes out of springs either, they do. One of the things that's interesting though, there's something called deionization, which is probably the best kind of water filtration system you could buy for your home because it also filters and it purifies. So it takes out some of the heavier metals that aren't good for you, and it leaves some of the good metals in, and it catches everything except bacteria and parasites. Okay,
yeah.
Some people could boil their water. I mean, that would help, but boiled water, you will lose some of the heavy metals in the boiling. Not a lot, but a little bit.
And that's time consuming, and some people with today's schedule
Most people I know don't have time to boil water. They can't make pasta. So that's really about what you need to know. I mean, you know, there are lots of like bubblies, like the Perrier is a sparkling mineral water. Keep in mind it's important also to know that mineral water is high in minerals. Okay, this is probably one of my least favorite because those minerals can cause calcifications and they can cause hardening of the arteries if you're not careful.
And they taste funny too, don't they?
A lot of people love them. I know my mother just can't get enough of some of these guys. You know, she loves anything fizzy and sparkly, and she likes mineral. And I love the taste of spring. The interesting thing is a lot of people I deal with tell me they dislike the taste of water. They don't drink it. They come in, they drink maybe 1 cup a week if they're lucky. You know, but if you think about water, again, it's a purifier. It helps to cleanse and process nutrients. You must have it present. Otherwise, you know, your body isn't going to operate very well. I mean, I tell people, look around you at people who are really thin, and 9 times out of 10, they're real big water drinkers and they're slow eaters, those two. But they drink a lot of water. They keep their machinery humming along, so to speak. You know, the other thing people say to me is like, oh, I don't want to drink water because I'll be in the bathroom all day long. Well, water is interesting. You know, if you don't drink any, go up to 3 or 4 glasses for 2 or 3 weeks. Get your body accustomed to that and get your kidneys accustomed to that, and you'll find that you end up adjusting and you stop going to the bathroom so much. After another 3 to 4 weeks, increase it to 6, then to 8, then to 10. And by the time you're up to 8 to 10 glasses, you've got to have water all the time. It's amazing. You know, then you lose your interest in coffee every day, that's 6 cups a day or whatever, and your iced teas, because nothing quenches your thirst quite like water. And water is going to be a precious commodity in the near future. It's important that people get a hold of it now while they can, and it's still affordable.
And one of the things that I noticed when I was looking at your chart earlier was that one of my favorites is not listed here. What about things like Clearly Canadian water or Koala Springs waters, these flavored waters that are so popular today?
Well, you know, this is a good question. Next week we're going to be talking about natural labels, FDA and labels, and what the labels don't tell us. But natural means nothing. So when you see naturally sweetened, that means that it's artificially sweetened. And it's not all it's cracked up to be. Okay, it has to actually have a picture of a fruit on it to be a true natural extract. Otherwise, you're drinking a lot of pure sugar in those waters. And they're not really a water. They're a juice or a fruit or a sugar water. So it's not the same thing, and it's processed differently by the liver.
And
so water's water,
think that they're
sugar is sugar.
doing themselves a favor by drinking these sparkling waters that are flavored are actually maybe doing themselves a little bit of harm.
Sure. Well, they're probably putting some weight on and not knowing why. Okay. So any other questions about water?
What about, we talked about the different types of impurities that there are. What kinds of things could something like ingesting chlorine cause? What kinds of health problems could you have?
Well, chlorine is a problem. It blocks calcium absorption, of course, which aids in growth for children. If you look at things like fluoride, it's been known to be linked with Down syndrome. Aluminum has been known to increase the incidence of neuromuscular degeneration or diseases such as MS.
So we're not talking here about maybe
a little dirty water. No, we're talking about
serious health,
grave concerns about your health. And you know, it's one thing to be a victim, it's another thing to become aware, and that's why we do these shows, you know, is to help people become aware about waters. But you need to really take an active role in what you're putting in your body. And the sad thing is we have to talk about this now, because water isn't just good old-fashioned good for you water anymore. There are too many environmental conditions that are toxic and cause reactions in individuals without people ever really knowing what they're reacting to. So it's good, you know, let the buyer beware. It's a very good saying. So you need to investigate, and hopefully this information and looking for TDSs in water and making sure your TDS count is low is what people will begin to do. It's very important that they do that. Also, there's a number over here for a referral that we put up for people who would like to have their water in their home tested, which is not a bad idea, to see what kind of water they're getting. Because keep in mind, old homes have lead pipes. Lead pipes leach into the water. It increases the lead in your actual water supply. New pipes have copper. Copper leaches into the water now, especially if it's softened water, because the sodium eats away at the copper.
Oh my.
So you have to be aware, you know, what building you live in or what your home is lined with and what kind of pipes you have coming into your township, etc. But they can call 1-800-426-4791 to find out from the EPA. That's their safe drinking water hotline.
So it's kind of like the situation that we had not too long ago with radon, where people simply were not aware. A lot of people, when they purchase a home, haven't thought about what is in it.
For. Right.
Pipes are hidden.
Right.
If it's not right in front of them, if it's not paint that's flaking or something that's crooked, they don't always think about it.
Sure. And they will come out. There are some city municipalities that will come out and test your water. Okay.
So this has been very informative. It's very important that people understand that they need to be detectives when it comes to drinking healthy water.
Right. Well, I think we're about out of time here, so thank you for having me. I hope you learned something new.
I certainly did.
Good. And I'm Deborah Arneson. Join us next week. We'll be talking about the FDA and labels and what the labels on our food packages aren't telling us, not what they are telling us. We all know about fat. So thank you for joining us and good day.